In the history books, we often read about epic revolts, struggles for freedom that changed the course of nations. But some of the most incredible stories of defiance remain hidden in the shadows of the past. Today, we're uncovering one of them, the story of the Zanj Rebellion, one of the largest and longest-lasting slave revolts in history. Our story begins in the 9th century, in what is now southern Iraq. This region was the heart of the powerful Abbasid Caliphate, a sprawling empire at the height of its golden age. Its capital, Baghdad, was a center of science, culture, and immense wealth. But this prosperity was built on a brutal foundation. Far from the glittering cities, vast swampy salt marshes lined the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. The empire needed salt to preserve food and for other industries, and the land itself needed to be reclaimed for agriculture. This was back-breaking, deadly work. Who did they force to do it? Thousands upon thousands of enslaved people, captured from East Africa. Known collectively as the Zanj, life for the Zanj was a nightmare. They toiled under a scorching sun, scraping the salty topsoil from the earth. They were given minimal food, barely enough to survive. They lived in squalid camps with no sanitation, and disease was rampant. They were whipped, branded, and treated as less than human. The conditions were so horrific that the average life expectancy for a Zanj worker was tragically short. They were seen as disposable tools, easily replaced. Previous attempts at rebellion had been small and were brutally crushed, but despair was turning into a simmering rage. The Zanj were not just laborers. They were people torn from their homes, warriors, farmers, and artisans who remembered a life of freedom. They were waiting for a spark, a leader who could unite their anger into an unstoppable fire. In the year 869, that leader arrived. His name was Ali ibn Muhammad. His origins are a bit mysterious. He was a Persian, not a Zanj, and he claimed to be a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad's family. He was a charismatic poet and a gifted orator with a fiery passion for social justice. He saw the immense suffering of the Zanj and recognized their potential power. Ali traveled to the salt flats of Basra and began to preach a powerful message of liberation. He didn't just promise freedom in the afterlife, he promised it here and now. He declared that God did not condone their enslavement and that it was their sacred duty to rise up against their oppressors. He told them, "I have come to you to release you from your chains." His words resonated deeply. For people who had been stripped of everything, Ali offered them dignity, hope, and a cause worth dying for. He treated them as equals, calling them brothers. Soon, hundreds, then thousands, of Zanj flocked to his banner. They were joined by other discontented groups, disillusioned local peasants, desert Bedouins, and even some disgruntled soldiers. Ali ibn Muhammad had ignited the rebellion. The initial success of the Zanj rebels was stunning. They were fighting on their home turf, the treacherous marshes that they knew better than anyone. They used guerrilla tactics, launching surprise raids from their reed boats, disappearing back into the winding waterways before the Caliphate's armies could respond. They armed themselves with stolen weapons, agricultural tools, and sheer determination. In 869, they achieved a major victory, capturing the port city of Al-Bula. This was a huge blow to the Abbasid economy. A year later, in 871, they accomplished the unthinkable. They sacked Basra, one of the Caliphate's most important commercial cities. The fall of Basra sent shockwaves across the empire. This wasn't just a minor uprising anymore. This was a full-scale war. The Zanj were not just fighting for freedom, they were building a new society. Ali ibn Muhammad established a state of his own, complete with its own capital city al-Muqtara, meaning the chosen. He minted his own coins, established a government, and created a formidable army. This wasn't just a band of rebels. It was a functioning state, built on the principles of equality and justice for its followers. For over a decade, the Zanj state thrived. They controlled a significant portion of southern Iraq, disrupting trade routes and defying the full might of the Abbasid Caliphate. The empire was busy dealing with other conflicts and internal power struggles, which gave the Zanj crucial time to consolidate their power. They built fortresses, dug canals, and organized their territory with incredible efficiency. The Abbasid Caliphate, however, was not going to let this challenge to its authority stand. The Caliph al-Muwafiq, the brother of the ruler, took personal command of the campaign against the Zanj. He realized that brute force alone wouldn't work in the marshes. He began a slow, methodical, and incredibly costly war of attrition. He offered amnesty and rewards to any rebels who would defect, slowly chipping away at the Zanj's numbers. He built his own fleet of armored riverboats to counter the Zanj's naval superiority. Most importantly, he began a massive engineering project to drain the marshes, robbing the rebels of their natural defenses and their main advantage. It was a long, brutal siege, not just of a city but of an entire landscape. The tide began to turn against the Zanj. Their supplies were cut off. The drained land exposed their fortresses to direct assault. The Abbasid army, with its superior resources and manpower, slowly closed the net. One by one, Zanj strongholds fell. The fighting was ferocious, with immense casualties on both sides. The final stand took place at the Zanj capital al-Muqtara for 2 years. From 881 to 883, the city was under siege. The rebels fought with desperate courage, but they were starving and vastly outnumbered. In August of 883, the Abbasid forces finally broke through the defenses. The city fell, and the rebellion was over. The aftermath was brutal. Ali ibn Muhammad was captured and executed, his head paraded through the streets of Baghdad. Tens of thousands of his followers were killed in the final battle and its bloody aftermath. The Abbasid Caliphate had reasserted its authority, but at a tremendous cost. The war had lasted for 14 years, devastated the region's economy, and cost countless lives. So, what is the legacy of the Zanj Rebellion? On the surface, it might look like a failure. The revolt was crushed, and its leader was killed. But its impact was profound and long-lasting. The sheer scale and duration of the rebellion were a wake-up call for the Islamic world. It exposed the deep injustices of the plantation-style slavery that had become so common. While slavery itself didn't end, the practice of importing massive numbers of East Africans for large-scale agricultural labor declined significantly. Never again would the region see a slave population of that size concentrated in one place. The empire had learned a very hard lesson about the dangers of such extreme exploitation. The Zanj Rebellion is a powerful testament to the unbreakable human spirit. It's a story of people who, in the face of unimaginable cruelty, refused to be broken. They organized, they fought, and for 14 years, they carved out a kingdom of their own from the mud and salt. They reminded a powerful empire, and they remind us today that the desire for freedom is a force that can never be truly extinguished. Their story deserves to be remembered, not as a footnote, but as one of history's great struggles for liberty and dignity. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the past. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more hidden histories. Let me know in the comments what other historical events you'd like to see covered. Until next time, stay curious.